Me, a little bit about me. I started Raphah Institute. We're in our fourth year of engagement here in Nashville. Um, we got our feet wet with a restorative justice diversion program. And this we kind of grew out of my own personal experience of just wanting to be more, like I assume many of you, just wanted to be more involved in what was happening in the city, what was happening not just in the city, but what was happening with people. My background is in law enforcement. I was a police officer here in Nashville, and I had a chance to see what I would call some of the brokenness or the things that aren't working so well for everyone in Nashville, kind of up close and personal. And it became very apparent to me very quickly that we were trying to solve with policing and prosecution and incarceration stuff that never was going to solve ever. But these were way bigger problems and way different problems than just crime, right? That we're talking about issues related to housing, we're talking about issues related to poverty, we're talking about, yes indeed, issues related to violence, talking about issues related to social isolation and geographical isolation and economic isolation, and shame, and lots of other really deep historical issues. We're talking about racism, we're talking about lots of other challenges. And I could see that as a police officer. I mean, I could see on the ground level, I was not solving anything, and neither were the people that I worked with. We were not solving anything. And so that became a big driver for me. Way back then, I really didn't know so we're talking like 2000, late 90s, 2000. I didn't have a framework in my head for what to do. I could just see that what we were currently doing wasn't working. And so that became kind of the driver that would ultimately lead me to start Raphah Institute. We started a restorative justice diversion partnership with juvenile court, the district attorney's office, with the public defender's office and the police department. And instead of kids getting prosecuted when they commit a felony crime, some of those cases get sent to Raphah Institute. And we work with the person who's been harmed in the case, as well as the young person who's caused the harm in the case, to reflect on that harm, to think about the harm, to unpack that harm, to process that harm, to think about the impact of that harm, and also to explore together ways of repairing it. We ultimately bring the parties together in a conversation where they have this kind of dialogue. And they explore how to repair the harm. What does repair look like to the greatest extent possible? And over the last 3 years of engaging with that, we've had about 50 kids complete the diversion program. We have currently to date, we're still crossing our fingers, we have a 0% reconviction recidivism rate for kids who complete the program. We have a 4% re-arrest recidivism. That is, only 2 kids who've completed the program have gotten rearrested, which in our world, in our mind, doesn't really mean anything. Just because you got arrested for a thing doesn't mean you did anything, right? So the program has fared very, very well. We learned early, even in that process, that many of the young people, though they fell into our cup because of a crime that they had committed, there was a constellation of other challenges and issues that were in that young person's life, right? And we wanted to position our work to better respond to those other challenges. And so in November of last year, actually 2 years ago, we started formulating how could we do that. And we actually had a case where a young person had a multi-systemic therapist that actually met with us as we were meeting with them. They met with her and with us. And we were like, okay, what do you do? And they told us what they did. And we were like, that's exactly what we need, kind of thing. So then we started to research, like, are there more of you around? And we discovered that there there was only one organization in the entire state of Tennessee that has multi-systemic therapists. And these are therapists who are particularly geared towards and trained around working with young people who are justice system involved. Not only the young people, but their families as well. And so we were like, what? There's only one organization in the state that has this kind of thing. And in Davidson County, I think there were only 4 therapists. I think it was only four therapists in Davidson County. And yet we have a space of 80 something thousand kids, right? Mm-hmm. So we set out in November to launch that. Actually, we took our first MST case in November, and it works with in conjunction with our restorative justice diversion program. And you have here today with you members of our MST team, Tasha Coleman, who is our MST supervisor, Caitlin Burkhart. Now, Caitlin just got married. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you. It still sounds weird when I was like, wait, who's Caitlin Burkhart? But yeah, no, thank you. Still adjusting myself.
And we have Tony Edwards, who's also on our MST team. And as you heard earlier, maybe I don't know if all of you were on here yet, but Lizzie Bowen, Elizabeth Bowen, it comes as one of our interns. She's interning both on the MST side. And Lizzie, are you doing RJ stuff as well? Yeah, you're working on both sides. Yeah. So I want to pause there. I want to pause there for a second before I just kind of transition into some more part of the conversation and just give anyone an opportunity if you want to ask any questions or to give any kind of response. Somebody, anybody, nobody? Okay, cool.
Cool.
So one of the things that we knew was actually, before I go there, I want to toss it to any one of our MST folks to just talk a little bit about, maybe even give a little bit more detail as to what you do, the impact that you've seen your work have on the young people that you serve. In fact, I'm going to toss it to Caitlin. Caitlin, hop in here and talk a little bit.
I was definitely making eyes at Tasha, like, Tasha, take it away. But I guess I was making too many eyes and you're like, that singled me out. Okay. I believe I started in October of last year. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I was on the first case that we got referred. And working with a male teenager and his mom in the home, which was a first for me in my role as a social worker. I've never been in the home, and how great that is to be able to be in the community and in the home. So you're not having those barriers of getting to the office to provide services. So it was just great in every way. And so thankful for them and how eager they were to participate with me. And just saw so much growth between that time. Yes, there were ups and downs with truancy coming with, my goodness, COVID and adjusting to when school was virtual 1 week, switching to being in person. So trying to support in that space. But really it's, when we're in the home doing sessions, these are skills that the family already has, and just empowering them to feel confident in doing those things. This is resiliency that they already have, and supporting them to see that, and then just walking alongside of them with it. Really, it's just, like I said, I can't speak to that enough, that this is strength and skills that the family already has, and just empowering them to practice them and realize that. So we discharged that case of mine, goodness, I can't remember, probably in June. And when we had discharged, him and his mom and himself had like their repaired relationship, better communication, a lot of trust that had been rebuilt, that they put a lot of work into. His attendance improved. He was able to do credit recovery so he could graduate on time. He was at risk for not graduating as a junior, and that's what it was looking like for him. But he went to summer school, which was really hard, and made up credits, and is gonna, as at the time of discharge, going to graduate on time. So did a lot of work, him and his mom. But that's kind of some specifics of what that case looked like. But You're working in the home and supporting whatever system that they're involved with, school, peers, employment. Yeah, so kind of just went on. I don't even know where I'm at right now with what I'm talking about. Tony, do you want to add anything?
Caitlin, I think you introduced a couple of really important things to think about. One is the notion that this engagement keeps the young people in the community. You actually go into the home where the action is happening, right? Into the space where the young person is. And this helps to reduce the distance or we talked about that isolation, that geographic isolation, that social isolation. This is an effort really to say, okay, let's find the most stable spot possible, right? And help make it more stable, right? The other part that jumps out to me of what you said was that the families have what it takes to be successful. They really do. And what we do, what our team comes in, and this is really throughout the organization, throughout all of our slate of programming, is really coming and just walk alongside to say, okay, to help point or to help, support, right? It isn't a savior. It's not coming in to fix something that is broken. It's not something that, is designed to disempower you, but really it's around giving, not even giving you power, but helping one to realize, the resources and power that they have. Caitlin, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So we applied to Impact100 for a particular reason, right? We spent the first 3 years thinking about how do we change the practice of responding to harm when it happens in a community, right? Typically, our community says harm happens, we harm back in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? Whether that's incarcerating a person or punching them back in the face, whatever, right? But we wanted to explore, how do we respond to harm, to people who are harmed and people who cause harm? How do we respond to them in a way that accounts for the harm that's happened, but does it in a way that does not cause more harm, right? So that's been our challenge. That's what we've been trying to do, is to create concrete practices centered in that idea, right? Our restorative justice process is exactly that. We're responding to harm in a way that accounts for the harm and really addresses the harm, but does so in a way that doesn't cause more harm. Our MST therapists, that's exactly what they do. They are confronting harm on its doorstep, right? But doing it in a way that is not causing more harm. But the reality is that our culture is conditioned psychologically, to do something different than that. Our culture is conditioned to kind of just take the easy road. Something bad is happening in the community, just take it out of the community and put it in a cell somewhere. Just take it somewhere else, right? So that's what we're conditioned to think around. And so what we wanted to do was begin to storytell, to begin to tell story about a new way of thinking, right? A new way of engaging, this kind of new way. We wanted to begin to talk about the successes that we've had. And so we applied to Impact100 to say, you know what, could we get some money, not to do direct programming, but to actually talk about the programming that we're doing, to actually begin to tell story about, the success that we're having and what we're trying to do. How can we begin to change the community consciousness and raise awareness around this? And so we had some ideas that have centered in creating some video production, getting engaged in social media. If you were following us before we got this grant on social media, you knew that there was not really much happening. If you have followed us since, you've seen that there's been some uptick in there. What we are currently doing, and this is the big thing, this is the big part of the grant. What we are currently doing right now is we are working with a producer who is putting together a significant length video documentation of the work that we're doing. That's still in the work process, so we haven't spent all the money yet. So we're still working. Our team met with I don't. Many of you may know Mac Perkle. I don't know. He's done some amazing work in video production and capturing stories throughout our city. So we're working with Mac to document this work and to tell this story and to begin to capture it. Our team met with him several weeks ago, and it was kind of, everybody sort of just, talking about, from their perspective, here's what the story looks like. They begin to just tell stories, right? Tell their own stories, very much like Caitlin, Caitlin just did. And so we're in the process. We should begin filming here early fall. We're thinking that the production is going to be complete by early spring or so. So we're looking forward to that. And what we're going to be able to do with that is use it in several different ways. We're going to be able to use it, one, quite frankly, to continue to raise more funds around the, to support the work that we do. But it is also, and I think more importantly, we're going to be able to use not only the video as a whole, but the various pieces of footage that we can splice off of it to be able to introduce conversations and have conversations in the community around how do we change the trajectory in a very meaningful way of people who experience harm, especially those who find themselves in the court process. We're still imagining what that looks like fully. We're still imagining what the video is going to look like. But the impact that Impact100 has had is we've been able to begin to walk down this road, right? Which is an important thing. I talk with organizations frequently, and that is a space that many organizations arrive in. We're doing something good, but nobody really knows about it. We think we have a solution to a thing, but not many people know about it. How do we get the word out? I think Impact100 was there probably a year ago. I mean, maybe last year. You went from, I don't know, I think the first grant was what, 50,000 maybe? 30,000, 40,000?
24, yeah.
24,000, to 90,000 to 203. We applied in the wrong year. I don't know what but no, I think that's an example of the need to tell the story about a thing. And when you're able to do that, you're then in turn able to have more impact. It becomes a cyclical thing. And so we're really, really appreciative of just that impact. It's different. It's not, you can't walk and see a house that was built, or you can't go and say, okay, there were 10,000 plates of food that were given away, right? And that's what oftentimes what we face as nonprofit leaders trying to raise money. People want to give to something that they can sort of tangibly see, and that's great. But the reality is the stuff behind the stuff, the tangible stuff, is a bunch of intangible stuff. And that's what really makes the thing go. It's kind of like a car, people see a pretty car going down the street on the outside, but guess what? It's the engine, people. It's the engine. It's what's under the hood, So I'm appreciative of just the posture that you all had to say, no, we get it. We get it. We get it that it's not, this, frontline, very, very kind of like hard, tangible thing, that this is something that maybe funders wouldn't normally fund. You talk about a marketing communications effort, kind of a thing. So we appreciate the courage that Impact100 has had to pour into us that way.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. And, a part of what we look for is sustainability. And that's what you're working on, right? Growing and sustaining your cause. So absolutely. So what are your big plans for 2022?
Oh, well, one, I'm gonna toss this over to Tasha. Tasha, I want you to talk a little bit about some of the areas in which we are expanding and that we're looking at expanding in, and the impact that is going to have on the MST team. You and I have had some conversations about that. Just kind of talking to that space a little bit.
Sure, thanks, Travis. So currently, we are in conversation with juvenile court to expand our case types, which would include a more severe, rigorous youth offenders that would include weapons. Obviously, that creates a different type of concern among our stakeholders and constituents, community investors. And so we want to make sure that we're really giving a full wraparound services to those youth that are involved in that level of criminality. So ideally, we would have those young people participate in the MST program, which, like Caitlin has explained, it's really an intensive in-home therapeutic model. It gives our therapists have the autonomy to use various treatment modalities to really tap into whatever the specific needs or goals of the family and young person are. And so that we can be most effective in making sure that we alter their decision-making process and put them on a better life trajectory.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. So that is a significant thing. We're negotiating with our system partners around what does it look like for us to. I'll give you the short version of this. So Glenn Funk, our DA, comes and says, Travis, we're having great success with the RJ program and with MST and everything. Really good outcomes. How can we expand this? Which direction should we go? What should we do more of in this space? And we said, well, there's some more severe case types that I think will work really well. He said, okay, well, what does it look like for us to pilot, these things, so we picked aggravated robberies. That's a thing that happens. Kids are engaged with that, that I'm taking a gun, I'm going and I'm robbing somebody. I'm not shooting nobody or nothing, but I'm pulling it out and I'm making you want to give me your purse, right? So we're expanding that case type. And as Tasha pointed out, yeah, absolutely. We want to be able to continue to respond in a responsible way to young people who are engaged in violence, and this is going to have a significant impact on our MST team, right? So we're looking at expanding our MST team, right? So Tasha's workload is just going to get a little bit more intense, and Caitlin's and Tony's, they're both going to be taking on more case types. So we're excited about that, but again, that's coming as a result of being able to share more of the story and get more buy-in. Let's be frank, y'all. People get scared when especially kids are running around committing crimes, right? You see it on the news and it's just a fear factor, right? That's a real thing. The reality is that youth-related crime has decreased over the last 3 years, right? Significantly, double-digit percentage points, right? It has gone down. It doesn't feel that way all the time because when we see something happen on the news, 60-year-old kid shoots a person, we think these kids are going crazy, kind of thing. We think all of the kids are going crazy, and they're not. There are about 40 kids at the most in juvenile detention right now out of a district of 85,000 children, right? Last year, we only had about 300 kids go through the juvenile court process out of a district of over 85,000 kids, right? So the problem is a solvable problem, right? But it just doesn't feel good when we're in the middle of it, when it's happening. It doesn't feel good. And so we have to be honest and say, I got it. I get it. We have to, even though things may not be as serious as they appear, and we have some alternatives, and we're trying some new things, and we're doing some new things to get even deeper and better outcomes with young people, it still requires an important level of communication and talking about it, and buttering the bread, if you will. We want our community to not only be safe, but we want our community to feel safe. And those are two different things. Being safe is one thing, but feeling safe oftentimes is just about communicating, hey, here's what's happening, we're successful at it, and here's what's not happening because of what we're doing, right? So you are a significant part of that from Raphah Institute's perspective, because Raphah Institute, in partnership with the system partners, are doing really good stuff. We're doing really good things, and you're helping us to begin to tell that story. So we appreciate you from that perspective. Tony, I want to toss it to you just for a quick second before Ginger, before we turn it over, but I want to toss it to you for a second, Tony. Tony, talk a little bit about, and Lizzie, I'm coming to you, so get ready. Tony, talk a little bit about, you came from a perspective of working in DCS facilities, right? So kids been to court, they've been found guilty, they've been sentenced to some time in a DCS facility. Talk a little bit about that compared to your work now as a therapist and working with kids on the front side of things before they even get as far down the road as being in a DCS facility.
Okay. Hi guys. Yeah, and I actually did MST before coming here, so it was good to even see them in the home even before I worked in a residential program. But working in the residential side, it is a lot different than working in the home, because I know when I was a therapist in the residential facility, we would do family therapy sessions, but it was over the phone, or it was the parent would come to the facility. This was pre-COVID. So it wasn't like we could see the parent practice the skills that we teach them. We were just talking to them over the phone and hoping they would practice the skills that we teach them. And what I recognized working in the facility is recidivism was very high, really high. We would have kids that just re-enter custody and come back to the facility. We were doing the same thing over again. They would do group 5 times a week, and everybody was bored with that. I tried to make it interesting. We would do individual therapy. Yeah, I did, because I don't like boring. So, and then we would do individual therapy once a week. But they didn't really get the restorative justice piece. It was just do your therapy, do your school, and do your program and go home. Everybody, well, most people can work a program. Pretty simple. It's using those skills when you get out of a facility, because the facility is restricted. It's got the rules. You break them. I'm be honest with you, they will put you down. They will restrain you, and that'll be it for you. But it's just taking those skills and using them in the community without somebody behind you going to restrain you, or it has to be intrinsic. So we try to teach those skills to the kids, and I'm gonna say I had 8 on my caseload, so I'm gonna say maybe half would be really successful. But then it's just not about them, it's about their community. They go back to the same community that they came to us from. Nothing really changed, and they're just back in that situation. So that's just the difference that I've noticed. We can now see the parents working those skills. We can be with them and help them with those skills and help them in the moment if their kid is having a fit, or being defiant, or help them with the home school link if they're having issues at school. Hey, I'm having problems with the teacher getting in touch with me, or if the teacher says, hey, I'm having problems with the parent, we can be that middle ground to help them with that link. So in
Awesome.
residential, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. In residential, that's really not the case, because they get schooled there in the residential. So we're not really helping them with school in their community that they're going to go back to, hopefully, within. So that's the real big difference.
Yeah, and once again, still accounting for the harm. I love Tony bringing out there that at the end, talking about how we try to keep the young person in the community that they're in, and to then be able to make the kinds of decisions and get the kind of parental support, the right kind of parental support that helps that young person as they're moving through all the systems that they're involved in, their home, their school, their community. And that's why we refer to as multi-systemic therapy. Lizzie, talk just briefly, if you would. You're up and coming. By the way, y'all, one of the goals that we want to have is we want Raphah Institute in general as an organization to be a destination of choice for interns. Listen, our experience with interns has been phenomenal. I'm old enough now where I can say these children, they are so brilliant. They are so brilliant. They come with so many ideas. Their minds are just lightning quick. And so we really love having these young, fertile, verdant minds, in our organization contributing. Yes, they're learning. I hope that they're getting something. I hope we're pouring as much into them as they're pouring into us. But we want Raphah Institute to be a destination of choice. And again, that comes down to communicating the work that we're doing, because when you're in school, your head's in the books, but being able to have a professor reach out and say, hey, I heard about this organization and some of the amazing work they're doing, say to the students, you may want to consider doing an internship there. And so we've had great partnership with Belmont. We've had great partnership with Lipscomb University. We've had interns all the way from Virginia Law School. So that's a result, once again, of us being able to communicate. Elizabeth, talk a little bit about just, what you see yourself doing in the future, how this engagement is impacting you so far. I know we're at the beginning of the school year. What kind of, how is it going for you, and what are you hoping to get out of this, and how is that impacting how you see yourself in the future?
So if I'm being totally honest, I never thought I would be working with kids. I always was very interested in like the homeless population, and then other like people involved in the juvenile, or not juvenile, but just like the criminal justice system. And so when I was looking for an internship, I was mostly focused on a place that kind of went like deeper and found the root cause of issues, because I'm a big problem solver. And so Raphah really stuck out to me just because it is just like sitting down with kids and seeing what gets them to the place that they're at, and kind of helping them to move along. And so through this internship so far, I've just realized the importance of intervention at this age. And so this whole time I've been avoiding working with kids, not for a particular reason, but just because I've like seen so many things with adults. But through this, I realized like it all starts when people are young. And so I just really appreciate the Raphah. For some of these kids, I can already tell is like the first time that someone sat down with them and been like, tell me what's going on, or tell me how you're doing. And I think that has a lot of value that people don't even realize, that so many adults are now still involved in the criminal justice system. And it's just because no one ever sat down with them at this age and asked, how's your day going? How's life at home? And so that's something that I definitely will carry with me. I can't say that I know totally what I'm doing in the future, but this definitely has opened my eyes to a lot of different things. I got to experience going to court with Tony this week. And so just seeing all that, and it's one thing to learn about all this in class, but it's definitely another thing to sit in it and be in the field. So I can't say that I totally know what I'm doing next, but this is definitely narrowing the path a little, but also widening it in a ton of ways. So I'm very thankful to be here and be a part of this team.
I was trying to send a quick message to Ashley to let her know I was getting ready to put her on the spot. Ashley Sellers is here. You're able to see her on the screen. She leads our restorative justice diversion program in working with young people. Ashley, Elizabeth mentioned talking about, she could tell that this, with some of the young people, and just in her short time, she could kind of see that, man, this is probably the first time somebody's actually really sat down and listened to and heard what is happening, with me. Here's what's going on in my life, right? Can you talk a little bit about, from your own experience, can you talk about that dynamic a little bit, and how important a work like restorative justice and MST can have, and kind of what can happen when young people don't have these opportunities or experiences?
Colleagues at Hopkins and Sinai, and we really want to be
mute. If you're not muted, we can hear you. There you go. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, if you could just speak a little bit to, just from your own personal perspective, the difference that this kind of thing can have, and what some of the outcomes can be when it doesn't happen. And if those of you, some of you are here and you've had a chance to hear Ashley talk already, you've had a chance to hear her and you know a little bit of her story. So don't be spilling the beans or nothing. But Ashley, talk to us a little bit about that, just from your perspective. If you don't mind, I just put you on the spot.
Well, I'm so grateful to Impact 100 that I wouldn't have any other way than to lean into what you were saying and be present. As a woman in Nashville, so excited about the impact that other women are having in our community. I don't know if y'all can hear me with this on. Yeah, so I will say that I grew up as a kid who had a really troubled life experience. I will say that I fell through I feel like almost every system crack that a young person could possibly experience. And that brings me into this work, hoping to help young people not have those same experiences. I've said before to some of my friends and coworkers that I wish that I had someone like them in my life. I wish that I'd had someone, come to me when I was a young person and say like, hey, what's happening? Like, are you okay? Like, what is it that you need? How do we support you as a community? How do we strengthen young people and really show up for them? And I think that's one of the things that makes our team as a whole just so successful, is that we may have a plan of what that meeting is going to look like and what we're going to go over, but really reading that room super quickly and saying, wait a minute, like, you're not showing up the same way that you normally show up. And I just want to stop and recognize that for a minute and give you the opportunity to really tell me what's going on. And from the experiences that I've had with our young people, I will say that they quickly lean into a space of transparency in saying like, they really seem amazed that someone has paused for a second to say like, I see you. And what you've got to say matters. And this agenda that I had for what we're going to do is second place. Like, you are the priority, and what is happening with you is the priority. And that's life changing. And we've seen that for our young people who say like, you really showed up for me. You said you're going to do something and you did it. And those are the transformative moments that really happen for our young people, that puts them in a space of being able to be open and vulnerable, to listen when somebody gives correction or accountability or any of that stuff. If I come directly into a place and try to say like, you did this wrong and this is what you're supposed to do, that young person is quickly like, nope, you're like everybody else telling me what I'm supposed to do, and you haven't even listened to why I'm doing a thing. As opposed to someone who says, okay, like, I hear you. I hear that. Like, what other decisions can you make? And how can you show up better? And how does that affect what you're doing? And then being able to lean back in and say, hey, you know what? You said you're going to do this thing and you didn't do it. And as someone who now has a relationship with you, I can hold you accountable for that. And they're quick to respond to that.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to share just a quick story, and then Ginger, I'm going to turn it back over to you. That just kind of highlights and I think captures, all of this in kind of a bow. We're going to call him Mario. Mario came to us from juvenile court. His attorney called us and said, hey, kid's in a pretty tough case situation here, and we're all wondering, the DA, everybody's wondering if you guys would be willing to take his case. It was an attempted homicide case, and we said, yeah, sure, we'll take it. And Tony was the MST therapist that was assigned to his case, and Ashley was one of the restorative justice facilitators that was working his case. And Mario was doing okay in the process. He was engaging, but it was kind of marginal. You could tell that there was a lot going on inside of his head that he really wasn't talking about. You could tell also that he wasn't altogether necessarily trusting Tony as a multi-systemic therapist, or Ashley as a restorative justice facilitator, or me as an RJ facilitator. And there came a point in time where, he and his caregiver kind of got crossways, and Mario left home. Now, this was a serious violation of his process, right? And he ended up ultimately getting in trouble in Wilson County. And he got arrested, and we're reaching out to him, and we're trying to call him, we're trying to text him and say, listen, Mario, you need to come back home. You are going to get, like, we need to hear from you. He's not answering anybody, he's ignoring, he's not saying anything. We end up Tony ends up traveling to Wilson County to the juvenile detention facility there to let him know, hey, listen, we still team Mario. You made some mistakes. There's some challenges going on. You got some rough days ahead of you. You're gonna have to come back to Davidson County. We don't know what they're gonna do because you violated your probation now, and we're not sure if they're gonna kick you out of this program, if they're gonna, bring those charges back. We don't know what they're gonna do, but we're still here with you. They ended up bringing him back to Davidson County. They put him in juvenile detention in Davidson County, and it came time for his court date. And the district attorney wanted to violate his probation, and the district attorney wanted to send him to a DCS facility for a certain amount of time. And from our position as an organization, we felt that Mario was engaging, that they were progressing in their process, but of course, like anything, nothing was perfect. They still had room to grow. They still had work to do. They still had some battles to overcome. They still needed to work on some of the communication that happened between them. Mario still needed to understand, what do I do when I get triggered? I normally just leave and I go away. That's how I cope. That's what I'm used to. That's what has worked for me. What do I do differently? Still had those kinds of processes to work out. And Tony and Tasha and Ashley and Terrance, one of the other facilitators, actually showed up in court. And they actually stood up and they testified. They said, please do not send this young man off. Yes, he made a mistake. Yes, we understand that this is a violation of probation on an attempted homicide charge. But this young man has been progressing in this, and he's engaging, and his caregiver still wants to engage. In fact, his caregiver was in court that day. His caregiver actually stood up from where she was sitting in the back, and she said, I want to just make a statement to the court, and I want to say that I love my young man, and I still am wanting him to do well. And Tony advocated, and Tasha advocated, and Terrance advocated for this young man on the stand. And guess what? The DA was not nice. The DA was pushing hard for the judge to send this young man off. The judge leaned back ultimately, and he said, you know what? I'm going to keep this young man. I'm not going to violate his probation. In fact, I'm going to turn him over to you guys, and you guys continue to work with him. I know that feels good to hear, but that wasn't the end of the story. What we observed afterwards, and we actually went downstairs, and they released the young man from detention. They released him back to his caregiver. We continued to work with this young man. Tony and the MST team and the RJ team continued to work with this young man, threw him a birthday party and everything. But he began, you could see when he got released from detention, he started to pull his braids from over his eyes. He began to talk. He began to engage. It was almost like a new person had come out of juvenile detention. And I remember Ashley asking him, you seem to be so much more engaged, and you're talking more, and you just seem to be brighter than you used to be. What's the difference? And he said, when we were in court, nobody's ever showed up for me like that. I realized for the first time that somebody actually truly does care about me. Y'all did not have to come in there. You could have just let me go. That would have been the easy thing to do. But I, for the first time, saw that somebody actually cared about me. Mario would go on to complete the program. He and his caregiver, Tasha and her team, and Tony, they released them from the MST program. And he continues to do well to this day, But that is the whole point, is deep engagement, letting young people know that, guess what? Yes, you made a mistake, but you are still part of the community. We still care about you. You have to be accountable. Absolutely. There are changes that you have to make, but you're not alone. We're not just going to throw you away. We're going to wrap around you. We're going to be texting you. We're going to be calling you. When you go in MIA, we're going to be right there. But we're also going to be in court advocating for you for what we think is best for you. We're also going to be fighting for you. And that's what made the difference. Yes, MST is great. Yes, RJ is great. But what's really great is Tony and Tasha and Caitlin and Ashley and Taransi and Thomas and Herbert. That's what's great about what we do. They are what is great about what we do, because they're the ones that are holding those connections and those relationships. And I frankly think more people need to know. Thank you all so much for everything that you do. Thank you for all that you have done for us. And we look forward to a long-time partnership with you.
I love that, Travis. Thank you so much. And what a wonderful example of the impact you're making on our community, and a sustainable impact. You're changing the lives of these children, and it's just incredible. I always love to hear you talk and love to meet people that work with you, and you guys give your life to this, and we're so appreciative. What questions, does anyone have a question for Travis or anyone else from his team today?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I'm a new member of Impact 100, but just as a school board member, I just really thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's a frustration as a school board member that we understand the work you do, and people don't understand that when we do discipline problems, it's not a simple bully fight. It's not simple teasing. It's systematic, and we do not have the resources to do it. And it's frustrating for us. Pre-pandemic, we knew what we needed to do for social emotional learning, and we couldn't get the funding. And I mean, the blessing of the pandemic is that now we're starting to get funding for it. But at 85,000, it's only the MMPS students. That's not including charter. That's not including private students in Davidson County. So the number is much bigger. So what you're doing, it's literally God's work. And I just thank you that you are doing the work that you do to help MMPS really solve the kids so we can get them back in school and to truly educate them like we really want them to do. So we see you, thank you, and hopefully we be able to partner in the future to really do the stuff as we get fully funded to help you do the work that you do so we can get kids back in school and really full their full potential. So thank you.
Wonderful. Anyone else comment or question?
I have a question.
Okay.
I would like to know if you could elaborate a little bit more on what some of those like restorative activities look like.
Sure. Ashley, you want to jump in, or you want me to take that? I'll take it. So the restorative justice process, the beauty of it is that it is customizable, right? It depends on the kid, it depends on the case, it depends on the victim in the space, right? All of us could be robbed one day, right? And we could say the identical thing happened, right? Somebody came up with a gun and pistol whipped you and took your laptop, right? But that's all going to land on each one of us different, right? The things I'm going to need in the aftermath of that may be different from the things that you're going to need. What do you want to see happen? What you want to see happen may be different from what Ginger wants to see happen or what Susan needs to see happen in the aftermath. And so most fundamentally, a restorative justice process is uniquely positioned to uniquely respond to the needs of the people that are engaged in the process, right? So when we work with a young person in preparation for sitting down and actually having a conversation, we go through an accountability process, right? What does accountability look like? And we have 4 elements of that accountability piece, right? So let me say something. Accountability, it is an ability to account. And we don't assume that everyone has that ability, right? And so we help a young person gain the ability to account for a harm that they have caused. So we think about 4 things. We say, play your part in taking accountability. P-A-R-T. P is for recognizing that a person was harmed. This was more than a crime that was committed, but this was actually a person that was hurt. And recognize that you are a person. You are more than just the crime you committed. You are more than the harm that happened to you. A is about acknowledgement. Being able to say, I hurt you. Acknowledge that, right? Call that thing out, to be able to say, I did that thing. I broke into your house. I stole your TV. I did that, to be able to acknowledge the spaces where you hurt another person. R is for responsibility for repair, recognizing that when a person is hurt, when a person is injured, there is a responsibility for them to be made whole again, right? Somebody has that responsibility. And part of what it means to take account for what you have done means to say, if I was the one that broke it, I'm the one that has the responsibility for fixing it, right? So taking responsibility. And then finally, T is about transformation, accountability. Taking account for a harm that has happened means I am going to do what I need to do to see to it that I never do this again. What do I need to transform in the aftermath of this, right? What does it look like for me to change? What things around me do I need to run with different friends? Do I need, do I need different kinds of supports? And this is the crazy thing, y'all. Most of the systems, I think Frida's getting at it. Most of the systems that we have in place that respond to young people when they're in trouble are not able to support the change or the transformation that they need. The questions aren't asked, what do you need? We just say, what did you do? And here's the punishment. But what is it that you need, and why? What brought you to school today with a loaded gun? What brought you to school today with a loaded gun? Not why did you bring a loaded gun to school today, but what is going on in your life that you've made the decision to do that, right? What is it? We're not gonna kick you out. We're not gonna suspend. We're not gonna expel you. We're gonna surround you and pull you in closer to try to deal with and address those things, so that tomorrow you don't bring a loaded gun to school. But you don't bring it to school because your needs are now met. The driver is now dealt with. As Lizzie talked about, the root cause of the thing is confronted and dealt with, right? So that's what it means to take accountability. Person-centered, acknowledgement, responsibility for repair, and transformation. So those are some of the things that we talk through, that we unpack with the young person. Sometimes the young person is asked to pay money for some of the damage to the car that was done. I got a $500 deductible. I had $200 to get it out the impound lot from when the police, picked it up. And so I'm out $1,000 because of this whole incident. We had a young lady who paid back $100 a month. She got a job and paid back $100 a month till she paid back her $1,000, right? We have young people. One young person, the gentleman who had his car stolen, had a picket fence in his backyard, and he said the amount of money I'm out is about the same that it would cost me to paint my picket fence. My fence needs painting. I'll buy the paint and the paintbrushes. Will you just paint my fence? And sure enough, the young man painted the fence. And in fact, the last day we were out there, the gentleman whose car was stolen, the young man, Ashley, was on that case. All of us were out there helping him finish up the job, painting the fence together. So those are some of the outcomes. But the important thing is that it is custom. It depends on the people that are involved. It's a responsive process to the folks who are participating in the process.
Wonderful.
Very
you.
good question.
Any other questions as we wrap up, or comments? Well, I just want to thank you guys. Thank you, Travis, so much. And check out their website, Raphah Institute. See what they're doing, learn more about them. Their stories are incredible. He's got great videos on their website. You can hear more about what they're doing. And again, this is a partnership, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you, Travis, and your team in the future. So let us know what you need, and we'll be there to support you.
Again, and thank you all for the amazing work that you do and the impact that you're having on Nashville. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you for attending.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.